Hello. In this session, we'll talk about benchmark testing and we'll also have a brief look into Kube-bench. So what is CIS benchmark? CIS benchmarking provides configuration guidelines for various technology groups to safeguard systems against today's evolving cyber threats. The CIS stands for Center for Internet Security, which releases benchmarks for best practice security recommendations. So we have a CIS Kubernetes benchmark, which is a set of recommendations for configuring Kubernetes to support a strong security posture. The benchmark is tied to a specific Kubernetes release. So we will be making use of this benchmark to test our kubeadm based cluster. So if you're making or if you're using GKE or EKS on Google or on GCP or on EKS, so in this cases, as a customer or as a user, they are not responsible for configuring or managing the control plane, which is completely managed by GKE or EKS. So if you're running on a GKE or EKS, you need to make use of those specific benchmarks like the CIS GKE benchmark or CIS EKS benchmark. So which is nothing but a child benchmark of the CIS Kubernetes benchmark meant specifically to be applied to GKE distribution or the EKS distribution. So this draws from the existing CIS benchmark, but removes items that are not configurable or managed by the user, and it also adds controls that are GKE or EKS specific, right? So in order to use this and test our kubeadm, so you can either do this manually by checking the benchmark PDF, or we can also make use of tools. So we will be making use of a tool called as Kube-bench, which is a Go application that checks whether the Kubernetes is deployed securely by running the checks documented in the CIS Kubernetes benchmark. So this tool can be ran in multiple ways. So you can either use a simple Docker command or run it as a binary. So if you're using a Docker command, you can pull the image aquasec kubebench latest, and here you can test the master node, the etcd database or kubelet, or you can test all of this simultaneously as well. And you can also give what is the current version of your cluster. So based on the version, the test may differ. And at the same time, if you're using Docker, so the Kube-bench needs access to the Kubernetes manifest files or the kubelet configuration files. So you also need to mount the /etc and the /var directories so that the kubesec has access to the Kubernetes resources in order to do the testing. So if you don't want to use Docker, we can also install the Kube-bench binary on your virtual machine where you have your Kubernetes cluster, and you can also test for specific tests using the test ID as well. So here, if you want to only check specific test cases like 1.2.7, 1.2.8, so you can give the numbers and it's going to, or you can give the IDs and it's only going to check for those specific tests. And then you can also get the output in different formats. So we can make use of the JSON format because we can iterate it and we can get the output, and we can use this in the CI pipelines in order to fail or pass the builds. So in the next session, we'll see a hands-on demo on how to use Kube-bench. Hello. In this hands-on, we will make use of Kube-bench and run tests against a Kubernetes cluster. But before that, let's have a brief look into the CIS benchmarking. So let me go to Chrome. So you can, search for CIS benchmarking and you will be landing on this page. So here, let me search for Kubernetes. So it supports or it has benchmarking for various products. So let's search for Kubernetes. And here you have an option of Kubernetes. So let me open this. And when you click on download, it's going to ask you for some basic details about yourself and an email address. And after you give the email address, it will be sending you, the benchmark as a PDF to your email. And once you have it, you can access it, using any PDF browser. So this is how the PDF is going to look like. So it's the CIS Kubernetes benchmark. I have a slightly older version, so I'm having a benchmark for version 1.6.0 of Kubernetes, but we can use this for our current version as well, which is going to work. So here, if you scroll down, it has a lot of information, and you can see it is around 270 pages. And it has various tests defined over here, and each test has its own ID. So you can check all the information over here. So let me quickly check one of the tests for you. So I can check for, let me search for 4.2.1. So if you want to test regarding the kubelet, so there is a test in kubelet which will ensure that the anonymous auth is always set to false. So if you want to check more details on this, I can go down. So let me quickly go down. So here, this is with specific to the kubelet configuration. So here you can check if this specific variable is set to true or false using these commands given over here. So if you scroll down, it gives you the description, like it needs to disable the anonymous request to the kubelet server. It also tells you why you need to do it and how to check it. So it also gives you commands to see how to check that value within your cluster. It gives you information about how to remediate the issue. So you can make use of this information, check and make changes within your cluster. And it also gives you commands like how to restart the daemon and the kubelet service as well. So let's quickly check this within our Kubernetes cluster. So let me use ps-ef. So let me go to my cluster, search for kubelet. So yes, we have a kubelet over here. So I think I'm using kubeadm. So this will be available as part of a config file. So let me open my config file, which will be available in varlib kubelet config.yaml. So as you can see here, the anonymous authentication is currently disabled in my scenario. So this is the default configuration which comes from Kubeadm installation, right? If this is true, so as per the recommendation from the CIS benchmarking, we need to change this to false if it is true. But since it is false, you can ignore this for the moment. So in this way, you can go through all the rules present in the benchmarking PDF and you can check them. But if you see, there are around 270 pages and there are hundreds of tests over here. So manually doing all this test would be a cumbersome process. So in order to avoid that, we can make use of Kube-bench. So Kube-bench is a tool provided by Aqua Security. So it can be used to check your Kubernetes deployment, whether it is secure, by running the checks against the CIS Kubernetes benchmark, right? So you can install and make use of this tool in multiple ways. So you can run this inside a container, you can run it within Kubernetes cluster, and you also have Kube-bench specific to AKS or EKS clusters as well, right? So I will be making use of a binary. So let me download and install the binary within my Ubuntu virtual machine. So let me copy these commands. So here, let me quickly install it. Okay, I guess it should be installed. So let me check Kube-bench. And as you can see, it is installed and it has also run the tests which are documented in the CIS benchmark, and it also gives you the summary as well. So if you see, it has done a lot of tests over here, Kube-bench tests. So some are passed, some are failed. So by default, it is going to run the test for the master node, the worker nodes, kubelet, and the etcd database. All this will be run. So if you see, there are a lot of information over here. So this is for the etcd node. Similarly, the first one should happen for the master node. So if I scroll up, and if you see here, the first one was done for the master node configuration file. So out of which many have passed, 2 are in warning, and 1 is in the failed state. So if you see here, one of them is in the failed state. The ID is 1.1.12. So the message is, we need to ensure that the etcd data directory ownership is set to etcd:/etcd. So this is not there. So currently it's failed. So if you want to solve this, you can scroll down and you can check the remediation for 1.1.12. So if I scroll down for 1.1.12, so these are the remediation steps which we can use. So I think we need to add chown etcd on var lib etcd directory. So let us do that. So let me copy it and let me run this. Okay, so there is no username etcd as of now. So what we can do is we can do a quick user add etcd, and then you can run this command. So now you have added the permission as mentioned in the remediation path. So you can also do a quick Kube-bench again to check if the status of the test has changed from failed to test or not. But before doing that, I would also like to show you the options. So currently when I do Kube-bench, it's going to run the test against the master node, the worker node, etcd all together. So if I only want to do it for the master node, I can make use of master. So I can make use of Kube-bench and I can give master. So let's see if it is going to take it or not. So if you see currently it only did the test for the master node itself, and out of which 42 have passed and 12 have failed. So let's check for the one which we have modified just now for the etcd directory. So if I check this, okay, so now if you see the 1.1.12 is in pass status, and the reason is we have used the remediation steps and we have changed the directory ownership, right? So in this way, you can quickly use Kube-bench to run a test against specific components within your Kubernetes cluster, get to know the summary, and you can also fix issues based on the remediation steps given to you. So we'll be making use of this within the Jenkins pipeline as well. So what we will be doing here is, so instead of getting the output in this format, it's better if you get output in the JSON format, which will be easy for iterating and fetching the output. So what we can do is you can search for Kube-bench help, and if you see there are a lot of options available over here, and if you see there is an option, check option, which can be used to check or to run the test for specific test ID. So you can also do that as well, right? So we will be using this check option along with the format. So let me see the format option. So you should be also able to fetch the response in a JSON format. So you just need to give -JSON. Okay. So let's try to check this for the worker node, for the node as well. So let me use Kube-bench. So for node, I only want to check one specific version, 4.2.1, and I want the output to be in JSON format. So let me run this quickly. So you get the output in the JSON format, which is not pretty printed. So let me use a simple, or let me pipe the output to JQ. Okay, so now you should see the JSON is pretty formatted, and the same response what you see earlier is presented to you in JSON now. So now I'm just checking for 4.2.1, which checks if the anonymous auth is set to false or true, right? So if you see here, currently this is passed because the default Kube-bench installation, keeps this argument to false. And the reason, and for that reason, you can see the pass is equal to 1, right? Since we have only tested it for one ID, you can see the tests, you only see one test, and we can make use of this summary at the end to check how many have passed and how many have failed. So what we can do is, so we can use JQ, and we can use dot total pass, or you can do total fail. So based on this response, we can make use of a script within a Jenkins pipeline to either fail or pass the build. Okay, so this here I've only tested it for one specific test ID. You can also do this for multiple IDs as well. So I can do 4.2.2 as well if it is there. So let me check. Okay, I don't want the JQ thing. So let me use JQ. Okay, so now if you see total test passes are 2. So let me, intentionally fail this build. So what I can do is, I can go to vi/var lib kubectl and let me go to config. So here, instead of false, I would like to enable this just to test the Kube-bench test cases. So let me give this as true. Let me save this. We need to reload the kubelet. So let me use systemctl restart kubelet. Okay, so let's give it a couple of minutes, couple of seconds should be enough. So let me search for kubelet. I think it is up and running. So now let's run this test. So we are checking for 4.2.1 and 4.2.2. So if you see here, earlier the total pass were 2, but now it is total pass are 1 and total fail is also 1. And the reason this is 1 is one of the test failed, which is 4.2.1. So it is expected to have false, but since we have changed it to true, this test has failed. Okay, the status is failed, and we can make use of this JQ command and the filtering option, right? So I can use this filtering option to see the summary, the final summary. So in our use case, we want the total fail to be 0. So what I will be doing is I will be making use of specific tests in the master node HCD database, and as well as in the node as well as in the kubelet configuration, so that before deploying my Kubernetes application to production, this all checks should pass. So within my Jenkins file, we can add a new stage. The name of the stage is Kubernetes CIS Benchmarking. So here I'm making use of a parallel steps. So here I'm running 3 different scripts, and in each script I'm checking for a specific Kubernetes component. So I'm checking for master, HCD, and the kubelet configurations using the CIS benchmarking. And we need to create these 3 scripts. So I have already created the scripts over here. So let me go to the CIS kubelet script. So here I'm using the same Kube-bench command, and I am making tests against a specific target. So in this case, I want to check the kubelet configuration. So I'm using node. I'm using a specific Kubernetes version. I'm using just 1.15 version for testing purpose, and I'm checking a couple of tests, which is 4.2.1 and 4.2.2, and I'm getting the response in JSON, and I'm checking if I'm getting any total fails using the JQ library, and I'm using the value of the total fail, and if it is not equal to 0, it means that some of the tests have failed. So I will be failing the build over here using exit 1. If the total fail is equal to 0, it means all the tests have successfully passed. So I'll be simply using echo to send back a passed message. So similarly, I have added a script for CIS benchmarking to check 1.2.7, 2.8, and 2.9, right? And the logic remains the same. The same thing I'm doing it here in the HCD as well. In HCD, I'm just checking for 2.2. Okay, so if you're curious to see like what is the test which is being done for this specific ID, you can refer to the CIS benchmarking PDF and have a quick look at the descriptions for this specific IDs. Okay, so I've already saved this, committed to my repository. A new build has already been initiated. So if I go to my pipeline, so if you see, all the stages have been successfully completed. Currently, it is pending in the promote to prod stage. So the CIS benchmarking, I have added the stage after the promote to prod stage. So once I click on proceed, the CIS benchmarking stage should be executed. So let's quickly check that. So if you see here, the CIS benchmarking stage has been executed, and out of the 3 steps, the kubelet step has failed, and hence the build has also been failed. And the reason why this stage is failing here is, so it returned an exit code 1, and the reason is, so one of the tests has failed. So the test for 4.2.1 has failed because if you remember, we have changed the the argument from false to true for 4.2.1. So the anonymous auth, we have changed this argument to true. So as per the CIS benchmarking, this should always be set to false. So in this way, so before you make a deployment to a production instance, you can use this CIS benchmarking as an infrastructure scan or as a compliance scan to check if the Kubernetes is set up properly with all the security embedded. So let me quickly change this back to false. Okay, so I should also restart the kubelet. So now the configuration has been changed. So if I run this build once again, this should be successful because I have updated my configuration, or I have remediated the issue for 4.2.1 test case, right? So this is how you can make use of CIS benchmarking. You can also add various other tests as well. So I'm only testing it for the Kubernetes cluster. So ideally speaking, you can also run a CIS benchmarking for the Ubuntu operating system where the Kubernetes cluster is installed. So depending on the use case, you can add another stage and you can also test the Ubuntu operating system as well. So that's all for now. Thank you.